Hey guys, today is Saturday. I am posting a little bit early. I'm a little bit eager to get through my story. I've been telling my Mormon story for a long time now, and I'm ready to move on to other stuff, I guess. So at the end of my last one, if you haven't listened to them, if you want to, if you're interested in the whole story, you can find everything on YouTube all at once. Here on TikTok, things are broken up a little bit just because there's a 25-minute cutoff. So these are a little bit longer form. You can see me on YouTube, Words of Ex-Mormon on YouTube. That link is in my bio. Otherwise, you can find all of my Mormon stories here. They're typically posted on Sundays, but sometimes on Saturdays. It just depends. Anyway, so where we left off last time, I had left the church officially. I had told, given my keys back. I was in the Relief Society presidency, and I had given the keys back and resigned from my position. And we were out. I had made a Facebook post about it, just kind of officially, because people were noticing that I wasn't there and noticing some of the posts I was making. And then they were sending me their inspired testimonies. The Spirit had told them to send us things. So that's where we're at. When I left, I still had conflicting feelings about the Book of Mormon. As a kid, I was taught, this is true. This is a history. This really happened, and it was discovered out of the ground, etc. That's what I was taught, without any doubt, without the ability to question. There was no questioning. There was no, well, how do we know it was true? Blah, blah, blah. Because we told you it was true. This is what we believe. And, I knew all the apologist answers. I gave those answers at times in my life. I discussed them. And I have this memory where, I grew up in West Jordan, and now it's a really sprawling community, but I moved there when I was just about 2 years old. And I moved into this neighborhood where, when I was in elementary ages time frame, there wasn't a lot out there. And I remember we used to drive pretty far. We would go to this grocery store called Alpha Beta. It was very far away, and we didn't have things that were close by. I remember when our neighborhood was just a couple of blocks together. There was a church building and then a couple of blocks, and everything else, for as far as you could see, were just fields. We would go out into the fields, me and my friends, and we would catch snakes, and we'd build little forts or huts. We'd pick wildflowers, which were really those bushy wildflowers that were, or weeds that were these clusters of purple flowers and stuff. And we'd pick those. And I have this really vivid memory when I was thinking about the Book of Mormon, and I was out in this field, and I don't know, I did not know anyone around me who was not Mormon, except for my second grade teacher, Mr. Edelson, who was Jewish. And I adored him, and I knew he was Jewish, but I didn't know what that meant. And, I didn't understand the difference. We didn't talk religion at school or anything like that. And I just knew that. I don't remember when he probably told us, but I don't remember it. But he was amazing, and I adored him, but I did not experience any kind of religious rejection myself as a child. I did not personally have anyone tell me that it wasn't true or anything, but I had absolutely been taught that people would try to tell me that it wasn't true, that they'd laugh at me or they'd persecute me in some way. Remember, I do have a video of this somewhere too, where I was actively taught that someday I might be asked if I believe in Christ, and the choice was to say no or be shot. And this is an actual thing that I was taught. I'm not the only person I'm not the only ex-Mormon who remembers it. I'm also not the only, I have true believing Mormon friends who remember being taught this kind of a thing. And whether my leaders were using this as a metaphor or an object lesson is irrelevant, because that was an event that I internalized and fully expected to happen. And I don't know, I was this 10-year-old girl with my bike out in the field. I don't really know why I was there that day. I was alone. I was by myself that day. And I was probably catching snakes or butterflies or something, doing what kids do. But I don't remember what I was doing. But I was thinking about these lessons about someday I'd be expected to give a Book of Mormon to someone. And what if they didn't read it? What if they wouldn't? What if I wasn't born in the church and I was given a Book of Mormon and I thought, this is true. This is historical information. I've been taught and told that this book is historically accurate and it is true and it really happened. So why are people against it? Not knowing about it at all, not having ever heard of it is one thing, but hearing that there is truth to be known and not wanting to know it, like who does that? Who doesn't want to know the truth? Even if it was hard, like I would want to know the truth. I don't want a church where anyone can just do whatever they want. To me, of course, God would have rules and guidelines that made sense. But that was coming from a place where I had a huge lack of life experience and very small controlled environment, and here I was, a 41-year-old woman now, having left the church I had believed to be true because I recognized that it wasn't good. And I'm proud of that. But I did decide at that point, thinking back to that memory of me thinking, well, if there's more truth, then I want to know that there's more. I would want to know when I was 10 years old-ish. If there's more truth, why wouldn't someone want to know? And so I did decide at that point that if there was more truth to be known, then I would want to know that truth. And so I took the plunge into Mormon stories, specifically LDS discussions. I became very attached to John DeLynn, John Larson, Mike with LDS discussions, Kara Burrell, Nemo the Mormon, Elf on the Shelf, Brittany Hartley, and so many stories, lots and lots of other content creators as well. That is not an exhaustive list. But so many stories just really, really resonated with me, just inside me. My experiences were very similar. And I'd been told previously that these people were spreading anti-Mormon material. And actually, none of these people, were spreading anti-Mormon materials. None of these people were mentioned by name by the church or whatever. I feel that very few true believing Mormons even know that they exist at all. But the genre in general was that type of people were told, as active Mormons, were told to avoid that type of material and those kinds of people. You don't listen to people who don't share your conviction. You don't listen to people who have doubts. You don't listen to their story at all. Don't take advice from people who have left the church. And I was told, that they're angry and bitter. You can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. But I never found that to be true. When I began to listening, I found facts, I found resources, materials, references. No, it can't actually be proven as fact that Joseph never had a first vision. I guess not. But we have several versions of the first vision, and the first ones he told mention only one figure of the Lord, meaning, I think, Christ, not two figures, not God. And he mentions Nephi as the angel who appeared to him rather than Moroni in some earlier encounters. I learned about bizarre timelines of the revelations given in the Doctrine and Covenants, anachronisms in the Book of Mormon, and in relation to the Bible. I learned about Joseph's audience. I learned about different accounts of the first vision that didn't just include detail. What the people would say was like different details. He told it in a different way depending on his audience, which never made sense to me anyway. But I always was kind of like, well, I guess that's true. If I'm telling my mom the story, I might include more details versus if I'm telling my husband or something like that, But because she would pick up on that, the details or whatever. And I thought, okay, sure. But I still thought, like, if this is like true and this is like such an important thing, then why wouldn't it be consistent, Anyway, but there's evidence that some of his witnesses of the Book of Mormon and other such events as the restoration of priesthood has been caught in lies in order to further the church and protect Joseph. So who's to say if they're reliable sources even? I suggest anyone who's interested go listen to the LDS Discussions podcast. That is where you'll find those stories and the sources. And I found that the people doing these podcasts and everything were just really patient and very kind. And they listened to the people telling their stories. They didn't interrupt, they didn't lead the conversation, they empathized, they validated, they didn't, interrupt and hijack the conversations, the discussions, or put words in people's mouths or bash the church at all. There wasn't any false narrative. And now, I do not believe the Book of Mormon is true. I found out that the wholesome things in the Book of Mormon were used to sex traffic young women into the church, to be polygamist wives. I learned about Joseph's use of his stories first to convince people to pay him to treasure hunt for them, and that when that started to fall apart and he started to get in trouble for that legally, his father convinced him to change his narrative to building a religion. I learned about the idea that the mound builders the idea behind the mound builders being white and how that relates to the Book of Mormon. I learned that the whole Book of Mormon was written as a way to validate manifest destiny, which is white people taking land from indigenous people because they believed that God gave them the right to the land, and to explain that white people had actually, this is not true, but this is what the Book of Mormon says, basically, that white people had actually built all the mounds and all of the structures in the area, and then were cursed with skins of darkness or blackness, which built up the white people as the intelligent, most advanced race, and that the people with darker skin couldn't possibly be more advanced. They built, the idea in the Book of Mormon is that they built those things when they were white people, and they fell from that knowledge and that intelligence and everything as they were cursed with black skin for being disobedient to God. More reference to LDS Discussions. Please listen to it. It's fantastic. My whole life, I had been under the impression that Joseph told his father about the first vision immediately. That is the story that they tell us in church. That's what we talk about in church. But I found out that he didn't tell anyone about any of this stuff until much, much later. I learned that his mother has journals recounting stories that Joseph would tell them around the fire at night that were very similar to those in the Book of Mormon. I learned that Lehi's dream was actually Joseph Smith Sr.'s dream, Joseph's father. And I learned all kinds of things about the temple ceremonies, which validated my discomfort with them. I learned a lot of truths about polygamy that I was never taught by activity in the church. I learned that the visions of angels in the Kirtland Temple was most likely a result of several days of fasting and then a lot of alcohol on an empty stomach. Truly, I actually wonder if somehow Joseph drugged the eyewitnesses to the golden plates, who mainly talk about having seen them with a vision or with spiritual eyes rather than a physical kind of tangible way, in order to influence what they saw or to influence what they saw. And the firsthand accounts that are given are all different. When the ones that are written in letters or the ones that are written in journals, they are all different. They do not match up. They are not the same. The only one that is a matching account is when it's written by one person and then they all signed it. I learned that the Word of Wisdom's mention of hot drinks would also include hot chocolate and soup, because the general medical determination at the time was that liquids over a certain temperature caused esophageal cancers, which was probably actually more to do with the chewing tobacco than it was about the hot drinks. It's not true, and the Word of Wisdom has nothing to do with caffeine or addiction. I learned about the blatant lies that Russell M. Nelson and other prophets have told. There's so much, and every time I learned something new about the falsities of the Book of Mormon, or the changes made, or the messed up timelines of the revelation of D&C, and the questionable character of Oliver Cowdery and Martin Harris and John Whitmer, they were abusive to their wives. They lied to protect Joseph multiple times. A lot of them have had previously, before meeting Joseph, given ideas and things that were incorporated into the Book of Mormon and stuff like that, and into the beliefs of the church. Failed prophecies, the shocking Joseph Smith translation of the translations of the Bible in regards to the curse of Cain and Black people, the Book of Mormon, sex trafficking, the literal lies being told by people in power. That there's this absolutely heart-wrenching moment in Mormon Stories. It's episode 1621. Christine Burton talks about having grown up with abuse, both very, trigger warning here, just really very bad, very brutal physical and sexual abuse from her parents, both her parents. And when she's very related to a lot of the apostles and the prophets and everything. And she, some of them were family members or really good friends of her family and stuff. And when she was older, she told President Monson about, and he was the president of the church at the time, President Monson, and she told him about it. And he said to her that he could believe it about her mother, but not to tell him anything about her father because he was a role model for him. And that just absolutely left me heartbroken and speechless, because I would rather my opinion of a person who is abusive and stuff to shatter than to support and uphold somebody with that kind of just putrid countenance. I want to know. I would want to know about a person who is abusive in that way, rather than protect an abuser. It made me very much question that what the men in charge know, how much they actively cover and hide. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Thomas the Tank Engine. It's called I'm sure there are several movies, but Teague, my Tiger, he loved Thomas as a little boy, so we watched it a million times. This movie is called Misty Island Rescue. And the trains are like sentient, they're like people, and they always want to be very useful. That's their whole goal, is to be very useful engines. And Thomas, the main train, he makes a series of good decisions that are responsible and stuff. So Sir Topham Hatt, he's kind of the human that's in charge of all of them. He gives him a really big responsibility. But from there, Thomas makes a whole series of really bad decisions, with the catchphrase, "I make good decisions," as an excuse to just do what he wants, because somehow he thinks that because he did make those good decisions at one time, it just means that all his decisions are good. And then he gets into a lot of trouble. And of course, it's a cute kids movie, and everything works out okay and stuff, and Thomas learns a lesson. But I feel like some of our leaders are like that. They made some decent decisions, and the church has some moral boundaries that are logical and beneficial for most people. So they just do what they want because they make good decisions, and consequences be damned. The really bizarre attempt at translating the Book of Abraham papyrus, that is a whole thing. The disturbing accounts of the second anointings and the types of promises that come with that. It's basically a blank check. They're told that, and there's more of this on Mormon Stories. You can look that up. There's several Mormon Stories episodes about it. But it's disturbing. And the thing is, they're told that they have their calling and election and made sure they will be exalted and they will be with God. And any sin that they can commit is they have a blank check, basically. They're absolved from any sin that they will possibly make, as long as they don't kill somebody or something like that. So it's, yeah, I don't think that even the best kind of people should have that kind of responsibility on their shoulders. in this life anyway, even if it were true. But it's not true. And then it just basically gives people a free pass because they think they are sanctioned by God to just do whatever they want, as long as they don't kill somebody, you know? I don't know, like I just have listened to months and months worth of these podcasts, like thousands of hours worth of these podcasts. The amount is overwhelming. I spent two years listening to nothing but just podcast after podcast after podcast. I got invited to a tarot and tea party shortly after becoming inactive, as kind of like a response to my message that I put on Facebook. And I had a friend be like, I'm having a tarot and tea party. Do you want to come? And, while I was getting my reading done, my reader began to tear up, and so did I. Like, the feeling that we had was exactly what I would have previously called the spirit. And the church does not and never has had a monopoly on the spirit or like a spiritual experience or whatever they may be for someone, whatever you want to call it. And I can honestly say that since leaving the church, I have had more of those experiences where I've had that feeling. I have never felt it in the church. It was discouraging because I thought I must be bad or wrong or past feeling, but I realized I can't even call it the spirit now. I just noticed that it's actually like connection or love or mutual bonding experiences. It's so much more realistic and easy to recognize when I'm not trying to attribute it to the spirit and associate it with something that is in the church, or some kind of teaching or something. In short, I wasn't given a choice to join this church. I was raised in it. I was born into it, raised in it, and indoctrinated so young that it seemed normal when it most certainly is not normal. If I was approached and given all of this information from the beginning and with a normal, sound, grown-up mind, I would never join this church. I was super lucky because I was really surrounded by so much support. My husband was on my side the entire time. We'd sort of deconstructed at a similar rate. He was a little bit more ready to leave before I was even, but I was the one who was the most outspoken over the years and ranted about the topics and everything for those years. My youngest brother, Boston, he hasn't gone to church since his teen years, so he's kind of almost basically a never Mormon. My brother, Beej, he is directly under me. I'm the oldest daughter, which may explain some things about me. But my oldest brother, Beej, and my sister, Bergen, they were out before I was. Both of them kind of since the COVID time frame. So I was very grateful that I had them already and my family was like right there. We had been talking through all of this for months, but our parents didn't know yet. Our parents didn't know that we were out. And we didn't really know how our parents would react. We knew that our parents hadn't gone to church in years, not regularly anyway. Boston, my youngest brother, again, he lived with them after his divorce for quite a while and they never went to church while he was there. So we had a pretty decent idea. We knew that our dad still participated in priesthood blessings where applicable. We knew that they both still wear garments. We knew mom had problems with the church. She struggled with inequality in the church. I talked about that at the kind of the beginning of my Mormon story, some of her experiences. She didn't like that the first presidency and the 12 are paid. While I don't remember learning about that. I don't remember when I learned about that. I just kind of feel like it was common knowledge. I always knew about that. I didn't know how much they were paid, but I figured it kind of made sense. If they had to leave their jobs to do this job, they needed a way to support their families, and that made sense to me. I still don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of churches have paid clergy. But one of the things that the LDS Church does pride itself on is the volunteer clergy, that nobody is paid because it's volunteer and it's, you do those callings because you're called of God and it's a blessing and stuff like that. So, I recently found out, she found out that about the clergy being paid, the top clergy being paid in like the late 2000s. I remember we had a discussion about it. she was pretty pissed about it when she found out. And at the time, like, I was a true believing Mormon, and I was like, it just doesn't bother me that much, you know? But weirdly enough, when I got my first tattoo, she was kind of indifferent to mine. And she asked about what I thought the church would think of it. And I said that a lot of people have them now. And I just was prepared for that. I enjoyed my tattoo. I wanted to get my tattoo, and I felt strongly about it. But she said that the church is changing and she just doesn't really like it. It's too woke now, which is super funny because for me, it's not woke enough. So kind of silly. But we figured my dad didn't really have a lot of problems with the church. My dad is by far one of the most humble, helpful, kindest, generous, amazing men. He really is. So I don't mean this, you know, I know some people may take it that way, but like, he is a cisgender white man, and the church is made for cisgender white men. And that is a privilege that they enjoy in the church. My dad didn't really have those problems because he really wasn't affected by those problems. You know, so at least he didn't talk about the problems that he did have with the church. To this day, he hasn't. You know, so we just had no idea. Our news about leaving could go several ways. They could be angry and kind of dig in their heels and kind of completely shun us, which we didn't feel was completely outside the realm of possibilities. They could just be like, oh, that's fine. Boz was not active. Boz, my younger brother, Boz isn't, you know, like I said, he hadn't been active since he was a teenager. He's in his 30s now. You know, it's never been a big deal. Or they could be like, oh, finally, you're out. Now we can finally quit acting like we're in, you know, like any of those things were possible outcomes. We did not know. And we were scared. We had all left the church. We already like officially had withdrawn from my ward. And I've withdrawn from my calling. My husband dropped his calling. He was in the young men's. So we were both kind of in pretty high profile callings. And I had made my announcement on Facebook. My siblings and we try to get together once a month. COVID messed that up for a little while, which is kind of why we didn't communicate about our inactivity or, you know, levels of activity in the church for a while. Was kind of, we got out of the habit, and like for almost 2 years there, we didn't meet as families or anything because it just was, we were trying not to get COVID. You know, so, but we've gotten back on track now since then. And my siblings and we try to get together once a month and go to dinner, play games, you know, something just to try to stay close. And one night we spent an hour or so just kind of driving past their house. We just were driving in a loop around the block, driving past mom and dad's house and trying to get up the nerves to stop. And we didn't. We didn't stop that day. A couple of weeks later, though, we did stop. And we started by doorbell ditching them like mature adults. And we hid behind their cars and stuff, waited for them to come out. My mom was in a good mood that night. So she was kind of chatty and everything. And my dad, like typically the strong silent type anyway, was not chatty. He's, like I said, he's kind of the strong silent type, and he's not always super chatty anyway. Anyway, it was kind of funny. And the vibe was good. And so we talked for a little while. My brother Beej, he said at one point, he was like, well, we came here to tell you something really important. About 9 years ago, I knocked a girl up, and my mom was like visibly panicking. And he was like, and his name is Trey, and who is his oldest son with his wife. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, you know, and Beach was like, well, actually, came to tell you that I left the church. And then, you know, Bergen and I chimed in that we had left too. Boz was there with us for solidarity and everything. And I think it broke the ice pretty well. My mom was so relieved that my brother didn't actually knock anyone up that us leaving the church was like no biggie. And she actually began to tell us about a lot of her experiences when she first learned about Joseph Smith's Wives. She said that it was at a stake girls camp where she was the leader, and my younger sister was in Young Women's. Bergen is 9 years younger than me. So my mom would have been in her like mid to late 40s or maybe even early 50s at that time. And she was first confronted, because Bergen was like late teens, like 16, 17. She wasn't like 10 or 12 or whatever going to girls camp. She was ready to graduate. They had a stake girls camp where they kind of went around and like different people were dressed up to talk about different portions of like the Doctrine and Covenants. And there was somebody who was dressed like Emma and talked about Joseph's wives. And so, you know, that was the first time my mom ever heard about Joseph having multiple wives. And it went so much better than we expected. So after we left our parents' house, we went to Dutch Brothers. We got chai, we got coffee, and we spent the rest of the night playing Cards Against Humanity, which is not the first time we've played Cards Against Humanity. My brother has a huge set, all of the decks, all of the different, in this huge set. It's a big game for us. We love it. Chez's parents were the opposite, and I'm going to cut off now, and we are going to do a segment together, so please come back and see that.